friends. My name is Stephanie Romero, and I am the founder and executive director of Awaken Pittsburgh. I want to welcome you to our podcast, The Ripple Effect. Awaken Pittsburgh is a nonprofit dedicated to fostering well-being, empathy, and compassion for all by teaching and encouraging mindfulness and meditation practices. I also want to take a moment to let you know that Awaken Pittsburgh offers many other opportunities for practice and connection. For example, you can join our online community, which features a space to more deeply explore the topics we cover with our guests. We have weekly posts to spark thought, practice, and reflection. I hope you will come join us to explore, connect with others, and deepen your practice. You can find out more at awakenpittsburgh.org. Welcome to Awaken Pittsburgh's Ripple Effect podcast. I'm really excited to be talking to Dr. Lovie Jackson Foster today. Lovie is a social worker, scholar, wellness practitioner, and the Deputy Director of Research at the Embrace Center, focused on maternal and infant well-being at the University of Pittsburgh. With over 25 years of experience, she leads efforts in Black maternal health, trauma healing, and equity. As a founder of Lovie, Love, Inspire, Empower, she blends research, consulting, and healing practices like yoga, mindfulness, and her Shea Lovie product line to support individual and community resilience. A wife, mother of three, an aspiring author and actor, she lives by the motto, "If you need me, call me. I won't rest until all the children are well." Lovie is also a program deliverer for Awaken, so I'm especially excited to be having this conversation with her. Lovie, I so appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today, and I'm so looking forward to deepening our relationship through this conversation and getting to know you in this way. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about it too.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to just start by talking about or asking you about your journey with mindfulness and meditation. How did you first come to practice?
Well, many years ago, when I started to learn a little bit about trauma, I had this vision that one day I would be a yoga instructor who could work with people who had been sexually abused and who had been sexually abused and had or wanted to have children. Because I was learning just about the impact of sexual abuse on people's ability to maintain connection, their thoughts about themselves and about others, about sense of safety, and how that can be a detractor from being in relationship and bonding and the constant plague of was it my fault? Will this happen again? Am I safe? And the fears about keeping your children safe because there is an potential intergenerational impact and recurrence across generations, even when the parent doesn't become the abuser. And so I had that vision, and for many years it did not come to be. And then I moved to Pittsburgh in 2008, and around 2009, one of my friends, who's a professor at CMU, invited us to this happy hour. And she invited about 8 to 10 people, and she said, "By the end of tonight, you will know why I invited you, but I'm not going to tell you." And in the course of talking with one of the people, I just was so connected to her, and I wanted to learn all about her. She does like somatic movement and treats trauma and different holistic modalities. And I just was like, I always wanted to be a yoga instructor. but I'm too old. And she gave me this look, and I always say the look she gave me was like a black mama saying, "What? You can do it." But she's a white woman. And so I was like, "What is that look?" And she just did the look again. And I was like, "I don't know what that look is coming from you because I only see that look as a black mama look to a child or someone going like, you can do it." And she's like, "You can do it." And and so I still did not believe, but a few years after that, several years after that, Felicia Savage Friedman opened up a yoga program, yoga teacher program, as the first Black woman in Pittsburgh to do so. And I had the opportunity to take that training. And the training, I will say, opened me up even more to the possibilities and the magnitude of blessing that mindfulness could be to me and to others. And even when I went into the training, the first night, I remember Felicia talked about, "This is about you." And I'm looking around like, is anybody else surprised by that? Like, I'm coming here to learn how to teach other people yoga, not myself. And so I was sitting there, and it was like one of those moments where, do I leave now and be less rude than leaving in the middle? Because I surely wasn't going to stay till the end. But as I stayed and sat there, it just brought to my attention that I needed this and that it starts with me, that this is an inner thing that is not just about teaching someone to move their body, but really it's about healing. And that really started with me believing that I could be healed because it really wasn't internalized. A lot of, and I realize now too, a lot of things that I wish I would not have internalized, I internalized, and those things that I wish I hadn't. And so mindfulness to me was, um, it's come to me at different phases of my life. And when I really got engrossed in it and felt that this is for me and I deserve this as much as anybody, and we all deserve it as much as everybody. Um, then was when mindfulness really came alive for me, and it was something that I felt so connected to, and spiritually as well as in other ways.
Well, that first is an amazing story of how you got on the journey of wanting to be a yoga teacher, which I did not know about you. So
Uh-huh.
that is an amazing story. But it also raises for me, yeah, like maybe you want to talk a little bit about your work in the world apart from being a yoga teacher, because I think what you're bringing to the conversation is all of your work, right? And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about the work you do in the world and also how you think, since you really talked about your own journey, right, and your own healing, how has that work that you've been doing on yourself through mindfulness and yoga impacted your work in the world?
Yes. In in so many ways, I've just learned that to appreciate who I am. And part of that is just acknowledging that I'm worthy of love. I grew up not even believing I was worthy of the name Lovey. And so yeah, when I was a kid, just things that happened to me in my life really made me hate particularly my body and my smile, which my smile is something people still to this day comment on so much. Um, so it was really sad for me to grow up thinking that I was not valuable and worthy and worth it. And then I started learning about social work. When I was a news reporter and editor, I did a lot of stories about child abuse I believe it was a 6-month window. And I knew at that point it was for me to follow that path and find out, how do you help people that have been abused? And at the time, I thought it was white children because all the news stories were about white children, and I was in Oregon. Um, And as I got into pursued a master's program and all of that, I learned the magnitude of trauma. And at the time, there were so many Black children that were in foster care. They were 40% of the foster care population and only like about 12% of the US population. So it deepened my passion even more. And then I started learning, one of my professors and I call her my auntie, Joy DeGruy, wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. She was my first Black teacher ever in my master's program at Portland State University. And Joy really inspired me, um, to think about the intergenerational impact of trauma. And through my internships during that time, she was also my internship mentor, what do they call it? Assigned professor for my internship. And so just really I started to understand the deep impact and the historical connections that trauma play in the world. And I was also fueled by like now understanding that so many Black children, how I viewed it, were missing from their community because they're in someone else's home. And it just was baffling to me that I didn't recognize that there were people missing from our community. And so it really fueled my passion for prevention, as I deepen my understanding of social work and my path in that, which I was a direct service person, but I also had this organizational, um, interest in organizational change, and that was also through some of my work with Joy that we were doing around mental health in the Black community, and trying to, get the county to fund mental health centers that focused on Black mental well-being. But it really taught me that part of my role in life, the reason for me to get a PhD, because I'm a person, I'm like real low key. I say simple, not in a disparaging way of myself, but it's just some way I've always related to little kids. And I think it's just because I'm pretty simple. Like I'm not real deep. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but I just say I'm just not a real deep person. But I really started to believe that me being blessed to be able to get a PhD, to go to a university that had a focus on prevention science, and to have this passion and real connection to people was so that because my life purpose was really about how do I help people connect to their better selves, to their higher selves, know that they're perfect just as they are. And so my work is really to help people build that connection to themselves first, and to understand that that is is vital, that that's okay. I grew up in the Black church where it was all about con what was preached was connection to God, um, but less so about your connection to yourself and to others around you. So what about that impact that you're having with your words or with your actions? And again, some of the things that I experienced in the church, were just a violation of my body and my mind as a little kid. And some of those things I've still never shared with certain people because I don't want to offend them or hurt them and things like that. So I'm still somewhat protecting them, but I also am working on healing every day for myself, and trying to usher that in for other people. Yeah, and I was really fortunate in Felicia's yoga training. Something that I would have never ever done before was, she had asked us to do a, numerology and astrology reading, and I grew up with the rhetoric preached that that was witchcraft. And so it was sort of scary, but interestingly, the year before that, one of my friends, Tamaya, she had talked to me about numbers because I was talking about actually the connection I felt spiritually to ancestors that had been raped, um, and abused. And I had this I don't know what you call it, like I don't know if I don't think it's a premonition, but was like a physical embodiment of what I felt at the moment was like an ancestor, a great, 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 great grandmother or something, when these two men walked by me in this restaurant. And my friend that I was with, I was in Portland, Oregon, and I was like, we have to move. We have to move. I don't want to be around them because I'm feeling something. So I was telling Tamaya about that on a drive we were taking somewhere. And she was like, "Are you open?" And I was like, "What do you mean, am I open?" She's like, "I just wonder if you're open." And I'm like, "Open? I don't know what you mean." And she was talking about numbers, and I was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not open," you know? And so, but then I ended up taking Felicia's course, and then I was open to it. And she talked about like it's an opportunity to learn something more about yourself and learn your strengths and all of that. And so, when I was open to it, and it was so interesting because the numerologist, um, who was Laverne Baker Hotep, she talked about my numbers and having a 1 and a 9, and that really was about me, that when I do something for myself and I'm self-centered, that will be also for others because I have that 9, and that's more like the universe. And then and then I did my astrology reading with what is his name? David um oh, why am I forgetting? What's Shipman,
Shipman,
David Shipman, David Shipman. And he was blown away by what are all the little signs called?
the astrological signs.
All the little astrological or the little things that come up when you do an astrology reading, they're little symbols. But he said that never before had he seen someone be their name. And he was like, your reading is all about love. And he says, this is who you are. And it's love of all different forms. And he said, everything that you do will center around love and health. And that anything you do for yourself will also be for others. And it was just a beautiful thing. So I really leaned into being about love and about health and healing. And just last year, when I was thinking about ways to really be a bridge for community to healing, this sort of saying came up for me that was everyday healing everywhere. And that's what I hope to usher in wherever I go, is just this spirit and this energy of healing. And so I do that in terms of working with social workers. I did that in CYF, working with social workers and really trying to help them understand that whether or not you had been treated kindly or fairly or um, rightly in the past, right now is about how do you work in aspects of healing and resilience into your everyday work. As you're going along, as you prepare to meet with a family, how do you prepare your heart and mind for this really difficult work? And then lean into offering them that space to do the same, because you may be the only one that says, you know what? I know that this is really hard. Or I know that by the reasons I'm here, that you have probably experienced some really hard things in your life. And just have this moment of mindfulness and this moment of acknowledging their humanity, and that they too are deserving of that radical compassion that says, in spite of what you've done, I'm going to this place that you need and deserve healing. So,
Oh my gosh, so many amazing things in what you were talking about that I want to follow up on. Um, yeah, so amazing that you were working with Joy DeGruy, the author of that like foundational book. Like
yes.
so amazing that you had that person in your life as a mentor. That's just yeah, my mind was blown when you said that. I was like, "What? That's
I'm
awesome."
lucky I get to name drop Joy
Yeah,
DeGruy.
that's right. That is right. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, super fascinating and also like the journey that you had with that, which, her work is so foundational in just understanding the impacts of our history, right?
Mhm.
And that's generational trauma,
Yes,
basically. Like naming it as generational trauma, right?
yes,
So that's
yes,
amazing. And that you ended up, because I also studied with Felicia
yes,
in the yoga teacher training. And that you ended up in that particular yoga teacher training, right? Is also just
yes.
and for people listening that don't know, so Felicia actually brings an anti-racism lens, right, to her yoga teacher training that for me um has been part of my formation, or helped support my desire to bring these practices that have often landed in the United States and upper middle class white communities to other communities that may not have access to those halls. Let's just put it that way.
Mm,
Right. So amazing. I'm just seeing the through line in your life and feeling like a
yes,
kinship with you in the through line
yes,
for me. Then the other thing that I just want to appreciate is that you name prevention science, right? And I really love that. And so like my hope in the work that, and you've done delivery with us, so you understand intimately what we do at Awaken, but like my hope always with Awaken is that we are giving people a skill set that can be building resilience, that can be building a base of wellness, that can be prevention,
yes,
right, in that bigger public health model, right? So
yes.
I would love to hear your thoughts about how you think like meditation, mindfulness, yoga, all those things like fit into that prevention science or public health model. I would love to hear that.
Yes, I'm gonna say on so many levels, on so many levels. Not only is it prevention, it's intervention, and it's postvention, and it's and so I um have learned, am learning um that by practicing the things that build our resilience that actually occur very naturally within us. If we watch a baby, they're doing yoga. They're changing their breathing patterns as they need. They're stretching and build and lengthening and strengthening their bodies all the time. My daughter, Angel, she even touches herself. She touches her skin. She touches herself where she needs to touch herself. And interestingly, when we first saw her do it, she was tiny. She was so little. And we were like, what's she doing? What's she doing? Like, why is she touching herself like that? Why? I mean, she touched her arms and hers, anywhere that she needed to be touched. And it'll almost be trance-like that she's just experiencing the beauty of touch because it's healing. She was born 3 months early, 1 pound, 14 ounces. She had to be strong to survive. And I see that the simplest of actions, her touching her skin, can be so foreign to us and yet can be is so natural and so healing. So I think part of it is relearning the tools of resilience, relearning that yoga, your own greatness affirmed, is what one of my yoga teachers of Yoga for Youth calls it. Your own greatness affirmed is yoga, just reaffirming that there are healing practices that are built within us that have been stripped away by the ways that we operate in society. By someone says, oh, I don't do that, or I don't know that, so you won't do that. And so it's relearning those things and being open, as Tamaya said, asked, can you be open? Can you just open your thoughts to what the possibilities are? One of my great, great, amazing friends, her name was Kita Gianetti, and she interestingly, so this is a sidebar, but she was one of the original uh what was the program? Now slipping my mind, but Soul Train dancers. Yes. So she's this beautiful, beautiful woman, but she had and it's interesting in this moment to share part of her story because when she was dying, she was an amazing storyteller, as is her son, whose name is One, Wone. But they're amazing storytellers. And so she told me so many stories about her life. She grew up in foster care, was in and out of, I want to say, 16 different foster and group homes by the age of 16 when she emancipated. But Kita had a lot of trauma in her life. And but so when she was dying of breast cancer, so she was resilient and strong, and she was burdened by this breast cancer that ended up taking her life. But through being with her over the time, I got to fly back and forth to Portland and be there with her, just to sit with her. And I sort of became her sister, her mom, her friend, her niece, just all these things, all these roles, her caregiver, her advocate, all of those things. And it was an experience where I thought, when Kita passes away, it's going to be devastating for me. It's going to be so hard. It's going to send me back to where the deep depression I had when my mom passed away. And I, but was what was interesting. So the last time that I was with her and I knew she was going to pass away, I was supposed to be there when she passed away, and we had made that plan when I saw her in February, and then she was passing away in July. And so the day before she passed away, I had to leave to come back home before leaving again to go to my next Yoga for Youth training. I, Stephanie, I was devastated that I had to leave her, and yet I knew that it was supposed to be her and her son that last moment. So I left him and just said, I'm sorry, I can't stay. I think he understood, but I was sorry to Kita. And then I came home for one day and I had to go to my Yoga for Youth training. Well, I'm there, and as we're learning these practices, and Yoga for Youth is based in Kundalini yoga. So we're doing these different practices and chanting and breathing and moving. And it was so amazing that going along, and there was a moment when I think I was on my back. I think it was what's now I can't think of the position, but when you're on your back and your feet are up toward your chest, your knees are toward your chest. So cradle, it was sort of like a what do you call it? What do infants? What's that position?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It sounds like reverse child pose
It
almost.
is. It's reverse. Is that what it's called? Reverse child pose. Yeah, let's call it reverse child pose. Your knees are up to your chest. You're holding onto your knees. Reverse child's pose. And I realized I wasn't in deep grief. And I was like, you know what? All this breathing and all this meditation and all this affirmation of your purpose and your being here. And if you're here, that's where you're supposed to be. It was healing me before I even got to experience depression or the anger at her being gone and at her having cancer and all these bad things that had happened. Instead of focusing on the greatness of her. And that was my tendency, just is to go into that space. And so I realized, like, wow, it's healing me. So something I recognized is that the practice, even without the intention or purposeful, I'm going to go from deep breathing to, happiness, just by practicing those things, it was healing me. And I'm like, wow, I didn't set out to be healed. I just was like, okay, I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna do what the teacher says. Okay, this is how you teach children breathing. These are some, chants that, activate the vibration in your body and connect synapses and have your blood flowing, and it was healing me. And so I got so excited because I'm like, yes. So the prevention is intervention, from deeper, um problems that can occur in our life, conditions that occur in our bodies. The healing that can take place through these different mindfulness practices is just so powerful. And I may be forgetting the question that you asked me.
No, no, it was all good. What an amazing story of like testimonial of just
Yeah.
how in that moment of loss that being completely immersed in practice
Yes.
supported you in your way through. And now like the more that I have read and understood like the vagus nerve and
Yes.
all of the trauma teaching and learning that we have now available that wasn't available even I would say 15 years ago, right? Really shows like how those movement practices and the chanting and like everything you're naming that is part of I would say like the smorgasbord of mindfulness practices, like it does heal us. It does heal our trauma.
Yes.
It does help us regulate our nervous system. It does all of those things. And so yeah,
Yes.
so I appreciate your personal story that really just illustrates that.
And I want to share that. So, I mentioned the work that I did with CYF, with people who caseworkers who work with trauma, supervisors, and all of that who work with trauma. But now I work, at the Embrace Center that focuses on maternal and child well-being, particularly during pregnancy and in the first year postpartum, first year after having the baby. There are a lot of women in the US who experience significant illness and even death, and that occurs in higher rates in Black women, um, and particularly in Allegheny County. We have terrible, overwhelming rates of maternal death and infant death. And so now part of my work is bringing these wellness methods, not so much to the front lines as much right now of working with the women or the babies, but with our staff, who are researchers, who are healthcare clinicians, who are doulas, who are, child or community health advocates. And so we are really ushering these wellness practices into our daily experiences, and that's part of how I'm spreading this now. And again, it's that everyday healing everywhere. And so I'm really passionate, as you are and awaken, about how do we get, as they used to say, more bars in more places. How do we get more wellness practices and mindfulness into more spaces? So that's part of the work I do with Embrace, is these practitioners, these healthcare providers, you need wellness in your life. You need to show up for yourself first. We were reading a scenario about a doctor who pauses before they go into the next patient's room, pauses and just breathes outside of the room. And it's a beautiful thing when you take that in and say, this is a moment where we'll pause and breathe so that you can hear. And whether it's a joyous news and it's a story of recovery or healing or well-being, or whether it's one of those really hard conversations about, maybe someone's health who is not going well, because we know it all occurs. And so how do we just be our best selves, utilizing and accessing our strongest resources, whether we're alive and well and happy and free, or whether we're suffering and struggling and deep in worry about, what may come to pass that may not be so good. But we all need it and we all deserve it. So Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that example of the doctor, because I feel like, secondary trauma in medical professionals is not really talked about enough, right?
No.
They are holding space for oftentimes people at their very worst health moments, right? They're holding space for people facing their death. They're holding space for people facing, really grave situations. And, that
Yeah.
can lead to secondary trauma. And so just taking that pause, um, but also like note, building that capacity to notice how it's impacting you is so important. And then doing the self-care that you need to work through what you're holding, as many caring professionals, but like medical professionals. My husband is an MD. He doesn't practice anymore. He's a researcher now, but that's one of the things that he teaches in the medical school at Pitt, like that he and I've talked about, is like, how are we helping support our new and upcoming medical professionals understanding what they might want to do to help themselves not burn out and not develop compassion fatigue.
Yes, we know we we can't afford anyone to have compassion fatigue. And one of the people that I work with at the county, um, Dr. Brian Miller, developed a components-based practice, which is called CSERT, which is components for enhancing career experience and reducing trauma. And it's basically a compilation of the components of mindfulness and talking about ways to implement those in the course of our everyday. And it made me think, as you were talking about your husband and about the healthcare field and caring professions, that if we had more people in more spaces, the bankers, the insurance approvers or disapprovers, the president, the president's people, everyone, we all need to understand that we are all valuable. Why would we want to devalue any human being? Another thing um, that I learned in learning mindfulness, particularly in yoga for youth, was about the connection to all living things. Um, Again, I was more so ingrained about the connection from humans to God, which then left a lot of people, you hear things about, um, you know, children obeying your parents and things like that, but not really so much about ways to love and ways to acknowledge. And that's what I think has been so powerful for me, is that I can learn something um, from everyone. And I think Felicia used to say this, that as I'm teaching, I'm learning. So you're looking out and you're observing that person. And I might draw from the way you're doing something versus the way I was just about to teach that thing, or the way I would have instructed that movement. And so I think it's for all of us to get on board with what mindfulness is. And the first thing is acknowledging our humanity and our value and our worth, affirming our own greatness in a humble and connected way, to say, because, I am because we are. I am because we are. If you're not well, how can I be well? How can we watch what's happening around the world and around the states? How can we watch that happen and not feel utter compassion and feel compelled to do something, whatever that something is for us? Not all of us are on the front lines, people that are going to march or um, write about it or hold a podcast or do it this way or that way. But what is our role? What is our stance? And if we get still, if we look at ourselves, we can find some way to acknowledge each of our humanity and value and worth. And I think that's super important. Also, I'm going to say, for my growth and learning, even about LGBTQIA plus about transgender youth and people and accepting. When I grew up, oh, everything was a sin. I mean, it was like I felt like the most terrible person, and I have learned over the years through people being loving and kind and compassionate for me and where I was coming from and meeting me where I was to help me grow and learn. And now I value that I'm an accepting person. I value that I can call someone's mother and says, "I just want to make sure you all know that we're a very accepting family and that your child is safe to be themselves with us as a Black family." It's just very important for me to say that and say that all the time and recognize the people that are in the world, to recognize our connection to the universe, to the trees, to the grass, to the birds, and not overlook those important connections as well as our connection to our higher power.
I love that. I love that's like one of the things that when I remember and try to do each time I guide meditation, the first thing I always instruct is like notice your posture and embody your human worth and dignity.
Wow.
See if there's a way that you can do that with your body right now, right? And just feel into it because I hear and feel what you are saying that
Mm.
sometimes life beats that out of us,
Yes.
right? And whether it's an identity we have or our trauma experience, whatever it is, but
Yes.
like we have a right to be here, have occupy space,
Yes.
right? And that we can hold that in our meditation, right?
Mhm.
We can be that through our meditation.
Yes.
Well, Lovey, I don't want to, I could keep talking to you for another hour, but we both have people to see and places to go.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
maybe just to wrap it up, I love to ask everyone if they have a resource, some sort of a mindfulness resource that they could share with the listeners. It could be anything at all. If you have something that has been supportive of you in your path that you could share with others.
So I'm going to share two things. The first
Great.
is I remember when you asked me to do this, you asked me about nurturing. And so
Yes.
the other
Which
day,
we didn't even I mean, we talked about it, but we went off script.
yes, yes, and that's okay. But I want to share this acronym that came. A lot of times I think in acronyms come to me. And I think it's when I came here to Pittsburgh as a postdoc, and my postdoc mentor, David Kolko, was always asking us to create acronyms for our projects and things. So this came to me and it's CARE, CARE. So nurturing is to me showing care for self. And care, C, is calming the heart, mind, body, and spirit. What can you do to calm yourself? Acknowledging and accepting yourself just as you are. R is for resilience in action. Fill your toolbox and use your tools. And then E is for everyday healing everywhere. Anywhere you go, you are there, which means your breath is there, your heart is there, your mind, your spirit. So nurture yourself, care for yourself. And then I'm going to say YouTube, YouTube University. There are so many people with a passion for healing and wellness. There's so much music that's inspired to heal with the different tones and the different vibrations. There are so many people who can resonate with our varied life experiences that you don't have to do mindfulness alone. You don't have to wonder if you're valuable to somebody because there's somebody's like Lovey and Stephanie who care about you. So use your YouTube University and care for yourself first.
And it's free.
And it's free. Yes, yes, yes.
Which I always love that. I love when I can share free resources. Don't have to buy it. It's free.
Mm-mm.
All you need is an
Exactly.
internet connection or phone.
Exactly.
Well, Lovey, this has been so wonderful to connect. I learned so much about you, and it really touched my heart to share this time with you. So thank you again. I really, really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Say Something Studios.